Okay, so now let's talk about our last type of elasticity, YED, in Unit 3. This is a very distinctive type of elasticity because it is the measurement of the responsiveness of demand to a change in income. So notice that here we measure the sensitivity of demand. It is no longer quantity demanded, right? So it involves the entire shift in our demand curve. And how we're going to calculate this is a little bit different too, since it is the percentage change in quantity demanded of a good multiplied by the percentage change in income. It's not a division equation like how we generate PED and PES anymore, right? So as I have mentioned earlier, YED can be both positive and negative. So when YED is greater than 0, it means that my income and demand for the good will move in the same direction. It's basically high school algebra, right? So if you multiply two numbers that have the same sign, it doesn't really matter if they're negative or positive. The result is always positive. And you'll be able to imply that it is a normal good. As people become wealthier, they're more likely to consume those types of good. And if YED is less than 0, and if you apply the same logic here, you'll be able to tell that a good is actually inferior in this case, since the negative sign actually indicates that when my income rises, the demand for the good will fall, or when my income falls, the demand will rise. So the relationship here is negative, right? So, okay, from the sign of YED, you'll basically be able to tell whether it is a normal or an inferior good that we're considering here. Okay, so now let's see this handy-dandy timeline that I drew for you. So this left region will represent inferior good, and the region on the right represents the normal good. So if the YED value is between 0 and 1, then it has income and elastic demand. It is still a normal good, but a percentage increase in income leads to a relatively smaller percentage increase in quantity demanded, right? So people will definitely consume more if they have more money as they become wealthier. Goods are usually necessities like food and clothing. For instance, if YED value for clothing is about 0.15, it means that 1% increase in income will produce 0.15% in spending on buying new clothes. So as you can see, this 0.15% is actually relatively smaller than 1% increase in income, right? And for luxury good, YED will be at this region. So notice that it is greater than 1 since it has income elastic demand, meaning a percentage increase in income produces a larger percentage increase in quantity demanded. So you can think about what might be the types of goods that will fall into this region. So luxuries, certainly those latest technology products will count, right? And jewelries and branded cars, and also private high quality education, right? Something that is quite expensive and not everybody will be able to afford. So let's conclude how we can identify the type of goods according to the PED value. So the first step is always looking at the sign, as we will be able to tell if it is a normal or inferior good. And then by looking at whether the sign is greater or less than 1, you can later identify if it is a normal necessities or normal luxuries. So the effect of increase in income on different types of good can be expressed on this diagram. If there's an increase in income for inferior good, the demand curve will shift towards the left. And for inelastic normal necessities, the curve will shift towards the right. So does the income elastic luxuries. But if you see it on a graph, what do you observe about differences between the shifting demand for inelastic normal good and elastic normal good? Pause for a second. You can see that the latter will actually shift even further, right? So at each price level, my quantity demanded is going to increase by a huge amount for elastic goods or luxuries. So for inelastic goods, it will also shift, but not that much, right? Okay, so finally, another curve that you have to know from this chapter is named after a German economist called Engel. So this is basically an alternative to demand curve shifts, and actually it does a better job in illustrating YED. So the horizontal axis represents the quantity, for instance, macaron per week, and the vertical axis is my income per week. An angle curve actually tells you whether the good is normal or inferior. And also from this curve, you'll be able to tell if the good is a normal luxury or necessity based on income. So how am I able to tell this? Right? Just bear with me here. So inferior good is easier to tell. It is the part where curve will actually slope down, which is here at this region, right? So income goes down, my demand will go up. And next, this part DC represents YED is equal to 0. Since the change in income doesn't really affect demand, you can see that the quantity actually stays at the same level, right? And as we have already talked about previously, for normal goods, demand and income will go into the same direction. So A, B, and B, C both satisfy this condition. But remember when we say normal goods, there are luxury and necessities, right? Necessity is more income inelastic, meaning the curve will be steeper compared to the luxury goods. So BC is a necessity. Or perhaps another way is to extend the curve and to see whether it touches the horizontal axis or the vertical axis. So if it meets with the horizontal axis, it is a necessity. And if it touches the vertical axis, it is considered as a luxury. So angle curve actually provides an additional piece of information that the demand curve shift diagram doesn't really tell you. Okay, so from this graph, you can see that for the same type of good, whether it is normal luxury, normal necessity, or inferior good, totally depends on the income levels. So that's why for people living low income region, those we typically would think of as necessities, such as food and clothing, can be luxuries for them, right? And as my income goes up a little bit more, it will then become a necessity and eventually be inferior at this high income level region. So when you see the data for a certain type of goods YED value, it is very important to inform yourself whether data is collected from a developed country or a developing nation, right? You need to be extra careful because based on different income level that I'm considering here, my final YED value can be very different, right? Okay, so that concludes everything that you need to know about Unit 3. And I hope you're enjoying studying, reviewing, or whatever you're doing right now. So I hope to see you next time. And please don't forget to leave a comment if you like the video and subscribe my channel, right? See you!